weekly consultations, and
Yeah.
point up the fact that you need a draft resolution.
I have a
Working
cable.
on Washington.
I've got a cable. No, I've got one.
Take a lot of work off of us by giving us a clear draft resolution. See out there.
Nations meet constantly all over the world. Subjects range from butter to missiles, but the form is the same. When the diplomat speaks in formal session, he commits his country publicly. So serious bargaining takes place in private, off the record. Diplomats call this corridor work. This film is the very first time cameras have been able to show the whole thing. Private meetings, whispered chats and all. In Geneva, at the Palais des Nations, the United Nations Economic and Social Council is in session. The United States is proposing a new post to deal with the avalanche of aid that follows in the wake of every major disaster.
Tragedies in Peru and Pakistan have alerted us to a crying need for a better international system to respond to these terrible emergencies of earthquake, flood, pestilence, and large-scale personal dislocation. Consequently, I propose the creation of a new senior post in the United Nations Secretariat to be called the United Nations Disaster Relief Coordinator.
For action to be taken, a resolution must be drafted and passed by the Council to define what the job involves. And though everyone agrees coordination is needed, there are real differences over how it should be done. The huge UN relief agencies like UNICEF must agree with the instructions, and until now they've operated with total independence. The Russians will oppose any extra UN spending. The French have not yet declared their position, and the British have raised their own, more cautious proposal.
Is going to seize this opportunity.
The film covers 3 weeks, in which the US tried to work with the British in the delicate business of framing a joint resolution, acceptable to London and to Washington. The American terms are set by Ambassador Bush in his opening speech.
My government proposes that he be authorized to mobilize, to direct, and to coordinate relief activities of the various organizations of the United Nations system in response to governmental requests.
It was a good speech, I think, and it was extremely well delivered. And the sort of hush that went over
A daily briefing at the US mission. Ambassador Bush is back in New York.
Anyhow,
Bernie Zagorin, ambassador to the Council, is now in charge. His UN advisor, Kathleen Bell, plays a key role behind the scenes. The film deals with only one of the many points at issue, but diplomats see it as the most important.
and as you suggested, the passage about coordinate, direct, and whatever it is, really picked up the flack from the specialized agencies and the fiefdoms.
How do these people propose to work in the absence of a coordinator?
Well, their argument is this, and it's a sound one. They say you can't come in and do this kind of thing because we're the ones who know how to do this sort of work. And I said, well, that's not what it means. A person who is a coordinator but directs traffic you can call him coordinating or he can direct. What the content of the word is very much what you make out of the thing, and if you make an effective working system, there is some directional responsibility that he would have without telling you how to run your programs, but what has to be done in what time in relationship to what other people. That's the kind of direct we're talking about.
A significant difference has developed, not on the need for action, but on the form which action should take. In our memorandum on the one hand, and the American suggestion on the other hand, when this first became apparent, we said that these were differences of emphasis, but nevertheless differences of substance. I would like you, if you could, to develop a little more your reservations about the role of the coordinator. I think I mentioned that we have a rough draft resolution. We're not entirely agreed on ourselves. As soon as we think it's fit for human eyes, we shall show it to you.
Alors, notre idée initiale du coordinateur était de répondre précisément aux besoins qui nous étaient indiqués par la Ligue. Je ne vous cacherai pas que j'ai eu aussi des contacts avec M. Eric Weah. Le pire qui puisse arriver en cas de désastre, c'est que des pays donateurs, pour des raisons de prestige, de propagande ou même de générosité, envoient tout de suite des choses non nécessaires, non utilisables, et ça crée un embouteillage terrible. Bien. Donc, il faut quelqu'un qui empêche les donateurs d'envoyer les choses, n'est-ce pas, tout en stimulant leur générosité. Et ça, c'est le coordinateur, à notre avis, qui peut le faire. Et c'est une tâche full-time, en cas d'urgence, qui justifie la présence, l'action d'un coordinateur. Voilà notre thinking préliminaire sur le sujet, mais comme vous voyez, nous sommes très ouverts.
Your reply, Mr. Ambassador, I think encourages me because I think we're in two things. The usual British preference for a certain vagueness as opposed to the French precision, and then the question of semantics. This brings me back to the difference of emphasis, particularly between the American view and ours. We have said that we want the coordinator in a semi-independent position. This is not because we want to get him away from the United Nations. We're thinking again of his appeal to people who are not in the United Nations system. The Americans appear to suggest in Mr. Bush's speech the other day that he should be firmly in the UN system in a high permanent rank with power to direct. This, in our view, raises difficulties.
The UK resolution on natural disasters, have you seen it? No. I'll give you that if you bring it. We can talk about it afterwards.
Thank you.
It hasn't got the punch ours has got.
We'll give it some more.
Naturally.
Did they use ours, or they want to make it a competitor?
No, they think that we can merge them.
I trust that they'll yield a little more than we will. We're not going to yield on what the guy's going to do. And we have, sort of nice little trading points. They have Geneva, we have New York, small things like that. They have undersecretary, we have nothing at the moment. I guess we can buy that without too much difficulty.
I would have thought so.
Yeah, I think so. We aren't told so, but I think so. Aware of our responsibility to the world community and toward our suffering fellow men. What the hell does that mean? My government has furnished 30.5 million through the focal point. What does that mean?
Well, that's the High Commissioner.
Through the High
That's the whole
Commissioner,
thing
can
we're
we
talking
say that?
Well,
We
he
talk
calls
about
himself
focal point.
This is a difference than calling him the High Commissioner.
Otherwise, the High Commissioner is the focal point.
Yeah.
He has assumed this job, which is really not part of his,
You can say High Commissioner.
Why don't we
afterwards,
say
you have
has
to-
furnished for the Pakistani refugees in India 30 million through the focal point function being assumed by. How about that? Or assumed.
Yeah.
Assumed.
Well, not assumed, because the assumed means that he took it on himself, doesn't it, which he didn't.
Well, for being performed.
Being
Performed by.
the High Commissioner.
Now, where do we refer to the new disaster relief coordinator?
Well, this is where
Well,
the focal point comes in.
Yeah, for the establishment on a permanent basis of a focal point for all relief.
All right.
That's it.
Yeah, I know, but we ought to say that as.
Oh, if you want to say as was outlined by Ambassador Bush.
Yeah.
But that's
As
it.
outlined, as proposed by my,
Ambassador.
or by my, by the by my delegation.
No, by Ambassador Bush
Proposed by Ambassador Bush.
By
yeah.
Bush.
in his opening statement.
All right, yeah. Or that.
Okay.
Now, you
But
got
we
the,
got, but I think we have to do that. As proposed by Ambassador Bush.
Well, this was proposed in more detail by Ambassador Bush in his opening statement to him. You got both draft resolutions in there, Bernie, mine and the UK. There's you. Yeah, okay, that's it. Leave us go. Bob? Alan?
I want this, huh?
I'll give this right to you. I'll just sit there and read and bring it right into you.
You coming?
Yeah. I don't think we can.
I agree with you. I don't see how we can. Not from that brief exchange.
This, I think, is the central point of the difference between us, and we would frankly prefer to leave out mobilize, direct, and just say coordinate. Or if you couldn't accept that, perhaps just say mobilize and coordinate. But we think direct is a word we'd prefer to avoid if possible. And I think if you say coordinated, you get the same force.
From the point
Disagree.
of view of the UN, objection to that is from the point of view of your own voluntary agencies.
There's also the UN system, who constitutionally cannot be directed, Now, it may be that under the impetus of popular emotion over the present tragedy, for example, you might get a bit of a grip. But if they resented what was being done, and if it were in any case beyond our constitutional power, in fact, to do it, then in due course you'd find the old situation recurring. I think as public emotion over the present tragedy subsided.
We've heard from a fellow in Martin Hill's office, this chap Jensen. Do you know him?
Mm-hmm.
He says that direct is a word which he thinks the agencies would find very...
Well, I'm not so sure. I
I've
disagree
talked to
with
the
that. So have I.
agencies, and one of them is back down. The FAO doesn't seem to mind it anymore.
That's right, and UNICEF
And
certainly is
UNICEF,
back there.
yeah.
Now, I was just...
WHO hasn't backed down, and UNESCO wouldn't back down.
Well, I don't know. I'm just...
You see, the trouble is we don't have, in fact, the Secretary General doesn't have power to direct, unless there are
But it
necessary bodies so
doesn't mean...
decreed.
What does direct mean? It doesn't mean direct in the sense of operating those things. It's directing the allocation of these activities, or the allocation of resources for these activities. Now, if you said, now, this is taking some liberty perhaps with our draft, but if you said mobilize, direct, and coordinate arrangements for the relief activities of, you're directing in a, the sort of, like a traffic cop directs traffic, but he doesn't drive all the vehicles. In that sense, it's a direction. It's not only a coordination, it's a direction. He decides...
Well, arrangements for it bring it nearer for our point, I think. I don't know what you think. I still think we'll have more resistance than you expect.
I think we could accept mobilize, because that's...
Sure.
But I must say I'd feel much happier if it was mobilize and coordinate.
But it's not a question of your happiness.
Well, it's a question of getting
But it's
it
also a
through.
question of efficacy, isn't it? If the effect of having the word is to get people's backs up, it's not going to help. If we cannot make it good, and their backs are up, then they will backslide anyway.
Perhaps we could reach a compromise whereby, over my sort of dead body, we agree to this, but that if there is great objection and people put forward amendments, we accept the amendments if there seems to be great support for them.
I think if there's great, if we say for the moment we accepted your form words, preferably with arrangements for, and we ran into trouble, I think we each have to play it by ear and not necessarily try to keep it quite in line.
We may have to just part on this.
Yeah,
but I hope not. I hope you could see if you can't buy arrangements for, because it might be a kind of a middle ground.
So we've got mobilize, direct, and coordinate.
Arrangements for the relief activities.
You can mobilize arrangements, can you?
Yeah.
Sure. Yes. Can't you? I don't know.
Perhaps we could just come back to that at the very end. If
yes, that's a drafting point, isn't it?
That's a language, yeah, that's... To cooperate actively. That's pretty well merged.
And that is, R8 is, we consider enough not to have the awful word direct, but I think since you took the initiative on this, we could leave it in at this stage. And
should we put in arrangements for it? Bothers your grammar. I don't insist on that bad grammar. Let's leave it out.
Well, it's easier. It's nearer our concept, and we also think it's more likely to invite cooperation. We do think you're going to run into headaches at direct.
Well,
constitutional and human.
What I'm saying is mobilize, direct, and coordinate the relief activities is preferable to leave in grammatically as well as otherwise. But
yes.
Should we just leave it in and see where it stands?
Leave out arrangements for it.
See how far it goes. Running up the flagpole, as the saying goes.
Well, okay, but I think that if this gets into trouble in the council, we, for our part, will have to start backing off direct.
If, for example,
and we'll come back nearer to the invitation concept.
Might I just record that we have made a slight concession in that I don't think we need mention Geneva. We were thinking of mentioning Geneva in our first draft, but I'm advised that Jensen said that really you can really forget about location for the time being and sort that out later.
That's better, I think. Okay, now what do we do next? Put it together?
Do either of us have to refer back to start with? I don't think we do at this stage, do we?
I think we'll have to explain our acceptance.
I think we'll have to explain,
yeah. I think we'll have to explain to London that we've accepted direct.
Well, let's go back.
We'll go back.
We'll send this by telegram almost.
Yeah. Yes. Efforts was not in the text that we agreed to yesterday. Here's your...
All they took out was purposes and disorganized. And
Yeah.
they just, the last one is a grammatical thing. So.
Yeah.
What's that?
This
yeah.
is, yeah.
I've talked to whom? New Zealand. I promised I'd give New Zealand a copy of this thing, and also to Hambro this
Okay.
morning.
All right.
And I think they'll both be interested in
Okay.
in joining
And
in
then what about Peru? I think we ought to
Peru.
give it to, Jack said he'd
Jack
give
said.
it to Peru.
Right.
And we might give it to Miramis. What do you think?
Yeah. Yeah. Give me. Yeah. Let's bring a whole bunch of around.
Who's had a disaster in Africa? Bob!
Tunisia. They always have disasters. What is the drill on this disaster relief thing?
Well, I have your joint text now, the British-American. It looks perfectly all right. I had, frankly, a slight preference for the British one than yours, because it was more precise.
No, we've taken some of
But
theirs.
now that you have a joint text, which is very good.
No. Well, we've taken some of the precision of theirs, yeah.
Yes.
Now, you still prefer the
No, I prefer
the joint text, yeah.
Your only problem is to be ready when the Russians say, okay, we agree, but why can't we either find the money from the regular budget? That they cannot, because it's very clear you have to create a new post.
I was told yesterday.
And the Secretary General. The second thing is, why not use the money from voluntary funds and things like that?
Yeah.
Perhaps Labouisse and Henrik Beer would object to. Direct, coordinate, and something. That the operative part.
I know, but we're going to have to struggle with that because our
But
feeling
if you could
is,
clarify in the
have,
debate.
that's right, in clarifying the debate, and I think I've
Not
convinced the British on
duplicate
this,
it.
that, you know, a traffic cop directs traffic. He doesn't drive all the vehicles. And this is
Yeah.
what sort of an analogy I try to use.
Yeah.
Now, I talked with Henry Labouisse, and I think I've convinced him that the word direct does not mean being operational.
You run the operation.
No.
Oh.
Are you still directing?
Yes, we are still. We are going to stick
4
on.
years, oh good, that was another suggestion.
Yes. Now, we've taken all of your suggestions, at least as far as Donald and I can see, except for the word direct. And we would like to leave it in to begin with. And this, to respond promptly to any call on behalf of the Secretary General by the Disaster Relief Coordinator.
That's good, I think.
Because we wanted the Secretary General still to use his prestige on such a call. Now, we are going to interpret the word direct, not that it is a directive, but that, as Ambassador Zagoran says, it's sort of a policeman directing traffic. I mean, you know, you go here and you go there, but then when you get there, you do what you want to do. It's not a question of directing their operational activities at all. It's directing them into the proper fields. I mean, you don't want, like we had in Agadir, do you remember they had so many blankets? They didn't need blankets at all.
I know.
The UNICEF man gave me the usual grumbles.
He did.
Yes, and I told him, you know, it's always the other guy.
Well,
I said I thought that Labouisse understood it and was not bothered about it anymore. Oh, WHO and Katani's going to have a problem. I said I talked to Katani, and he's not going to have a problem with direct. And I said, you know, we can always have language which is softened to such a point to meet everybody's position and to the lowest common denominator, but we really want to do something else this time. He said, yeah, I know you really do. So I said, we're gonna do it too. So anyway, the fact that he didn't have the thing, I think, may perhaps have contributed to his nose being out of joint somewhat. Nobody...
he had the first text of the agreed British U.S.
What did he say that he didn't have anything for him?
I took, from the time I got the British agreed changes this morning, I went immediately to him. He sat and watched me make them on my draft.
The number 2?
No, yeah.
Yeah. No. Did you work out something?
I worked out some languages I think is really brilliant.
I'm sure I'll agree to.
Excuse me. It's only one preambular paragraph.
Oh, Christ. I knew I shouldn't have come back. I started to read, All right, I've got to go back.
We want to head off, if we can, a resolution that calls for the establishment of yet another fund.
A protein fund?
Protein fund, exactly.
It'll be meat and potatoes next week. Now, do I have any copies of the disaster paper?
I just gave you 3.
Just 3.
More?
For me? So this is sort of, the thing is it will roll, and the Brits say, okay.
Well, I was going to check again with McCarthy. He said, I drafted the language with him as we stood there, and he said he'd think about it over lunch. He thought it was fine.
Which is that extra little piece?
And I told him that I'd have to check with you.
Yeah, okay. It's almost getting to feel like batting practice. You hit the same thing over and over again.
And let me go and get more co-sponsors of this thing if I can. Where is it? Okay, well, you tell me if you want to co-sponsor.
All right.
Good.
How many co-sponsors do you have
so far? Well, so far we've got Jamaica and the UK, and we hope to get Norway and New Zealand and Peru and perhaps Brazil.
What about France?
And yes, Vio said that he liked it and he hasn't seen the last chain.
So you are...
we have to put it in today because the debate's tomorrow. Yeah. We didn't realize this.
It is tomorrow.
Well,
I was wondering whether they might
us.
wait a few...
well, I would have hoped so. But,
1 or 2 more days.
But you see, they've got to...
yes.
Here comes Katani. He hasn't seen this. Mm-hmm. We have to... don't look so solemn, dear. You tired?
What's the matter? How are you?
Look what's happened to him.
I'm on crutches today.
When did this happen?
Yesterday.
He's a natural disaster.
I think the league could help you.
Maybe. I was playing tennis.
We've got an agreed text now.
You gave it to us on Friday. You have another agreed text?
There's another agreed text because Martin remembered this morning we hadn't mentioned the resident representatives.
Good.
So that's it.
Can I have it?
Yep. And we're now getting ready to put it in. And we've got so far UK, USA, Jamaica, and Greece. We're now going to get some Africans and some Latinos.
But I have to talk to you later.
All right.
Because I have a meeting in the morning arranged with some people on this.
Okay.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
All right. Well, I hope you were all right.
Oh, yes, I mean, it's just a nuisance. It's nothing serious.
Oh, well, that's good. Fine. Do you want to keep that, Dominic?
May I?
Yes,
fine.
indeed.
Thank you very
good.
much. Yes.
All right, good. Bye-bye. We've now got UK, US, Jamaica, Greece, Indonesia, New Zealand, and we're getting more.
As co-sponsors.
As co-sponsors. Yeah.
Very, very good.
May I have a copy of this bestseller? I've given mine away, last one. Is that all there is?
Yes. Yes. Have you got a real plan of action on how to live with this resolution? I ignore it.
He was also, as you know, a very important man for the world peace.
I've been asked if we would like to come to a meeting tomorrow morning in Katani's office where he's going to have the Red Cross and UNICEF. And
why should we go?
Well, UNICEF is still, I gather, complaining about it.
I don't see why governments have to defend themselves like this, do we? Is this...
No, but you might cut off some skullduggery at the crossroads. Bernie, are you going up to this meeting at 4:10?
Still puzzling about it. Whether I should or not. Sorry we're late.
Really, I haven't started actually waiting for you. We were just chatting. Now on the preamble, are there any suggestions, Martin, Henrik?
One just small one, and they're recognizing further. By way of experience, if this is of any importance, very often when you have a bad situation, you don't get a request. In Nigeria, Mr. Utant sent a message to General Gowan asking if he could send a humanitarian man down. He didn't get an answer to this for some time. Meanwhile, I'd been down there. I talked to General Gowan. I said, these are the kinds of things we could do. We want to do it on both sides of the line. Is it okay? And he says, okay. Now, this was with the consent of the government, but you don't do it against the consent of the agreement of the government. But you didn't have an official request. I think there are questions of political decisions that enter into this. I think there are also questions of pride on the part of some of these governments who don't want to kind of feel that they're having to request something. So I think you could beg the issue is all I'm trying to suggest. You don't make an issue of it.
I think that it is a point, but I don't think it precludes that kind of thing to give this kind of emphasis. It doesn't say that this is exclusive.
Is it a possibility just for an outside remark on A?
I was wondering why you and they were
It's not my business at all. There's nothing to do with Red Cross and outside organizations, but that's why I can be a bit objective about it. I'm still very doubtful of the meaning of the word direct. Isn't there a possibility in an oral presentation or anyone else to tell what is meant by it? Because that can lead to consequences of different kinds and some sort of administrative wangle and discussions, a rather sterile sort of character, if you start it if it isn't absolutely clear what you mean by it.
Well, if you mean direct in the sense of instruct, as distinguished from guide, I think you're in a box. Because to have a man who is the Undersecretary General instruct other Undersecretary Generals and Director Generals who are higher what to do, who have their own boards, who are supposed to determine what their policies are, I think in itself is a wrong concept.
On the first main point, I think the analogy, I'm sorry to say, is a military one. I mean, an infantry battalion commander can do his job, but when it comes to a combined operation, there's got to be a chief of staff, and this is really what this guy is, or would be.
Well, this is really, if I may say so, taking Mr. X and saying Mr. X's judgment is an overall judgment and can overrule any organization that exists, which knows, if I may say so, considerable more than Mr. X may know. We've been in this business, others have been in the business. Mr. X may decide, for example, that the furnishing of DDT in an emergency is the one thing that should be done. It may well be the WHO will find that the DDT is the thing it doesn't want to distribute, and you don't want to be instructed to do it.
I think both of these fears are not going to be realized. That the word direct could possibly mean those sort of, what shall I say, worrisome things that you talked about, but it needn't. In our view, the word direct is necessary because it has to go beyond coordinate and mobilize. And I think it is possible and perhaps desirable to be clear about it.
That's my point. That it must be
talking about it, but if I could use another kind of analogy. A traffic policeman directs traffic. He doesn't drive all the cars. Now, if he cannot get the different parts of the UN system, take account of what they say, benefit from their experience, be guided by their know-how on how to do things, then he is not coordinating either. So the whole damn thing falls to the ground. Now,
I don't think this is true, Bernie.
Let me finish.
Is coordinating.
No, but my point is this. If he ignores, anyway. We've talked about this before, and this is really, all I can say is that the fears, at least in our view, and we after all are the ones who pressed for this, are not justified. That's all I can say. And that it's not going to interfere with the proper authority and the sort of efficient management in the field of the operating agencies. It's not intended to do that.
What does it mean?
Well, I think I tried to say it, and I tried to say it before, and I think we've looked at it carefully. What it means is not what you say. It means that somebody is going to be there, sort of having a view about all parts of the thing, and is going to be really, it's traffic direction, if you want.
If you could consider something like calls on the Secretary General to disaster, who would assist him too.
Look, if you set up a man and he's accepted to do this, then you've done it, and you don't have to worry about it. If you fit every step into the previous frame, then there can never be any change.
But what objection do you have that the
Well,
Secretary
because
General should have the final
Secretary
authority
General obviously
in
has.
directing this?
Well, obviously he does have it.
Well, a situation may arise where this man, in his capacity as directing this, whatever it is, runs into stiff opposition by the Director General of WHO. What does he do in that case? The WHO Director General tells him to go straight to hell.
Oh, yes. You see, well, we have to assume that people are reasonable human beings.
You have to strengthen his hand that he's acting on behalf of the Secretary General,
All right,
that he is the Secretary General.
Let's go back to another...
Wait a second, we are in a sense anticipating debate should take place in the Council, not around this table, I think. Obviously, people who have their own scope and who know their job in the field are going to think twice about being asked or advised. Coordination does imply some degree of steering.
No, I'm not pushing it. I want to strengthen his hand.
Well, how about saying, let's go back, keeping the word "and who would be authorized in the name of the Secretary General to..." Up above. Calls on the Secretary General to appoint a disaster relief coordinator who would report directly to him and who would be authorized in the name of the Secretary General to.
Or on behalf of the Secretary General.
Or on behalf
On behalf of. I suppose the word direct is a policy word. I mean, sacrosanct, but orient would seem to me to be a better one, to convey the meaning you said. I made it so that
There have been a lot of discussions on this, I'm sure. We don't want to reopen them, but they know the views. Now, C, I have nothing, but on D, I have two small points, very small points.
If they've raised some points that change it a little bit, but not in substance, you know.
The British have
No, the Secretariat.
Secretariat.
Martin Hill and...
What is Martin doing now?
well, he wrote the paper.
Oh, did he?
I see. What is the point of direct?
Now, I shall take a very balanced position on that word.
Yeah.
There's a slight difficulty, as you know, among the co-sponsors on this.
Yes, this is the word.
That is the word which no one likes. But I am the co-sponsors. If members of the Council wish to question it, I would not oppose them. By the way, one thing on which you'll notice the draft resolution is completely neutral is location.
Yes,
this is one of the points on which the Americans and I agreed to differ, so we had to keep silent. But if anyone else has views, we've looked good men and true.
I spoke to the Turks at lunchtime, and they said they have some thoughts about this. They're talking about...
Are they going to ask the speak as observers?
Yes, and they might even have some suggestions to make.
It's just one of those days. We had to go in with a few more changes, which not really very significant.
Yes. But the French are worried about this word direct, that he's going to be the director of everything. But as Zagorin said, what it is, a director is a traffic cop. And where's the stuff coming from and where's it going? Well, we'll look at the business about Biafra. Remember the stuff they were leaving that, now what kind of a disaster that is, we leave to one side. People got excited in New York. They were sending over cocktail cookies. And, you know, the damnedest stuff that was just absolutely a waste of time.
Okay. Now look, Robert, you've got to take care of this in your UNDP activities.
May we call the meeting to order, please? First, I'd like to know what's happening today.
Well, first you've got a plenary all day long on natural disasters. Now, yesterday afternoon after you left, they tried to get Santa Cruz to speak, and at 5 minutes of 6, he said he had a 30 to 45-minute speech.
Good.
And
all the gory details about the children.
Smirnov said that he had, and he was speaking in French, by the way.
Smirnov?
Yeah.
For heaven's sakes.
That he also had a 30 to 40-minute speech.
Hi, I'll be damned.
So that means he's going to go through all the gory details on East Germany.
Oh, you mean this is an all-states thing?
This is, well, Santa Cruz's isn't, but
So it's one disaster
So
after another.
Yes, right in the middle of natural disasters. And then...
I'm glad we're sticking to the subject once.
So that's what's going to happen this morning.
Chile first, then Peru, then you, then me.
Yeah, okay.
You don't mind that?
No, provided you don't expect us to comment right away on your draft amendments.
You're going to comment immediately after?
No, I say provided you don't expect us to, because I'm speaking for co-sponsors.
He's going to ask what the cost of this is
Yes,
going
I'm
to be.
going to ask
We understand
the
it
statement
to
of the
be,
financial
the 205,000 mentioned by the Secretary General plus the salary of this chap.
Yes, I understand it's about 300,000, yes, but I need a clear statement and an official paper to that.
They can tell you how much the emoluments, the wages, the salary of this fellow would be.
No, words are not enough.
Yes.
I need a paper.
Fair enough.
Because it goes to the fifth committee.
Well, there will be a paper, in fact.
Yes, but by the way, it is your and our stand before that such documents be issued automatically before any suggestion or any proposal containing the financial implications is coming to a vote.
Well, I agree, but you've got to be fair to the Secretary. They got this draft resolution yesterday. They've hardly had time to cost it.
They'll do it today. I think they'll do it today.
They are working on it already, I know.
Good.
But you can't complain about delay on their case.
No,
because they've only just seen the draft.
I'm not going to ask it immediately, but I want to have it before the vote is taken.
You will find that they will say that they're already working on it.
And besides, I don't think it's a very difficult job to calculate the salary of 7 people.
Well, the figure varies according to whether it's New York or Geneva.
Ah, yes. No, we've left that.
You see?
Let it be Geneva.
Well, yes.
Well, then
you say that.
If you choose to add that, if you choose to add that, that's fine.
Very useful if you say that.
But that is a fact, and they're trying to work out the weighting, the difference in cost.
Well, for instance, I think...
You see, the 205,000 was based on the assumption of New York.
I think, honestly, that, for instance, the Director General of the office in Geneva can easily perform those duties. He's not overloaded as far as Winspear.
No, but this man must have no other duties. That's the whole point. He must have nothing else to do.
I note that the first operational paragraph of the resolution would authorize the coordinator to direct the relief operations of the various agencies of the UN system. If that word has a connotation of instructing agencies or ordering them to take certain actions, I would find it difficult. We all have our governing bodies who direct us what to do. They set our policies and approve our budgets. It would put us all in a difficult position to be directed to take some action not consistent with our policies and not within the means of our budgets. I therefore assume that we can construe the word as meaning leadership and guidance rather than instruction in the formal sense.
If we'd meant instruction, we would have said instruct. By direction, we mean to organize and stimulate and coordinate, all of those all put together. And I don't see why...
It doesn't come out too clearly. We hope it'll be clarified in the debate enough so that we will be able to explain it to our board and assembly too. Because we've got a constitutional responsibility in these.
You know, you all act as if we don't know what the constitutional responsibility are. We work on these things back home too, Mike.
I know.
We tell you this, we sat and talked for 3 hours with Laboise.
Yeah, and he's not
And he
convinced.
comes back and says the same thing. He doesn't understand what it means. Well, I don't know what you do. We say the same thing to you. He says if direct means instruct. Direct doesn't mean instruct.
We're much more concerned about the League. You see, the League has been operating with us in a quite different way than it does with the other
You all are so altruistic. The World Food Program comes to me and says we're terribly upset for Harry Laboise and UNICEF. Now you come and say you're upset for the League. The League has come to us and said this is perfectly fine with us. We think the resolution is great. Well, he said, I'm worried about the League of Red Cross Societies. And
Well, they're all worried about the other
that's what I
guy.
said
These
to him.
guys give me a pain where I sit.
Now, Harry. Now, Bernie, come on. So anyway, but that's why you've
Don't
got
say no,
to-
Harry.
No.
I told Harry that he's a tenacious SOB, but I would pick up what he said and I would say that it made sense.
Okay.
And he said fine. And I also said I'd pick up a few other things that he said, and he was very pleased about that. But you know, these worrywarts who like the world to be the way it was 20 years ago are just going to have to find that the world changes.
This is why you've got to explain to him what you mean.
I don't have to explain everything in terms of the world changing. You know,
No,
to the
but you
kids in the
can't-
streets who insist upon new directions for the society, sort of have to explain everything they do at every point in time. Some of the sort of older members of the society
look,
sort of recognize, and
right,
it just it makes me tired for these guys.
You've
Put
also
us
got
on the
people
defensive.
in this council, the Swedes, the
I
Norwegians,
agree.
that you've got to.
We'll do it.
Yeah.
We'll do it. We'll do it.
I'm not trying to get it out, but I'm just trying to be certain it stays in.
No. All right. No, I appreciate that. The only point is that they have prevailed for years in not allowing anything. My point is to interfere with their prerogatives. Coordinate cannot be effective without direction.
I'm not arguing with you. I'm
And
just
there's
trying to
just-
explain to you why you have to go do what I asked you to do.
All right. I'll do it. I'll do it. But why do we have to be the ones that, sort of to be the...
Because these are the words that Ambassador Bush used.
That's right.
He's
But why
the
does
first
the
one.
United States government have to be the only one to sort of stand up and say, in the face of all of this, that this has to be done?
Because-
Everybody agrees it has to be done.
Well, it's because, frankly, we are defending specific words.
Right.
And
But
you
if
could
the
say it
British
in
and the
another way.
others did not really agree with us, they wouldn't accept it.
Well, the thing is that you could probably find other words, but Bush liked those.
And so do I.
And so do you.
And so do you.
But I could find probably other words that would say just exactly what we mean without the word direct.
I find it difficult for a coordinator with 5 or 6 staff to check up and control the directives which he issued to the agencies who might well not be very favourable to such directives. So I make a formal amendment that we simply remove the word direct from subparagraph A of operative paragraph 1 of the resolution. I hope this would not give rise to any objections.
The distinguished delegate of France proposed the deletion of the word direct. He said he hoped it would not give rise to objection. It was carefully considered, I think understood. Mr. Labouisse, I think, himself expressed certain observations, saying that he trusted that it did not mean certain things, but if it meant guidance and leadership, it was an acceptable idea. May I say, Mr. Chairman, that it would not be desirable in the view of my delegation to remove the words direct.
We finished the general debate on natural disasters and then went into a drafting meeting.
And what's happening to the removal of direct?
Nobody mentioned it.
Good.
Nobody mentioned it. It stays in.
So what is the status of
The
that?
status is that we're going to have a clean text this morning, and but that everybody agreed to the redraft last night, providing that the heads of our delegations like the redraft this morning. It's longer and more complicated, but in some ways I think it's better. That's all.
So the thing, the state of play now is that this draft goes before the council, and it'll go through, and it's not likely that those who have
No.
specific.
They're going to stick strong.
Now, the one thing that people keep coming to me doing this, the directives of the specialised agency, why must we say direct?
Oh, come on. We've gone through that. And as I say, I'll say it again. A traffic cop doesn't drive the vehicles. He directs the traffic.
Nor does he lay down the law, so to speak. I mean, he doesn't establish the law rather than
He doesn't establish the law. And the governing councils.
Well, Labouisse's comment to that was if there's an ambulance going to the hospital, the traffic cop can stop it while the patient dies in the back.
His comment in
analogies are always rather
you know, Labouisse said in the session he was satisfied.
On direct, if necessary, I'll come in and try and support your position. But if someone moves an amendment, we'd look proper Charlies after everything we said in writing. We couldn't actually vote for the retention of direct. Okay?
You know, I just don't
And on occasion, I think that
if
much the
this
same.
happens, and because of the pressure of these other people, I'm going to really be angry because, you know, who is negotiating this? This is governments, and this is an intergovernmental council, and the pressure which has been applied by some of the, you know, the Duke of Burgundy and the Duke of Lancaster is just very strong.
But the pressure is soundly based. They all realize these boys are
But it's
autonomous.
been answered. It's been answered, and I think satisfactorily. At least they keep telling me that, yeah, we understand and so on. I feel that the discussion has been useful.
Yeah, check.
Because what it's done is to make it clear that it cannot go too far. And it really is their central guidance and leadership. But on the other hand, that there's some toughening at the center which is necessary in order for coordination to have any meaning.
Yeah.
And this is all. And in my view, and this is what I started with Laboise, if it does nothing else than to really delimit and expand in whatever, you know, whichever side of the fence you're on, this
Well, let's handle it like this. You've given your traffic cop an analogy. If it comes up and I have a suitable opportunity, I'll give my chief of staff an analogy.
All right.
But from then on, I can't push it any further. I have to leave it to you. As one of our co-sponsors has stressed, the word does not mean compulsion, but central guidance. I wonder myself whether the French point might be met by the suggestion which you, Mr. President, made to use the word orienter rather than diriger. We fully sympathize with the Soviet desire for economy. But on this occasion, we consider that the cause is such a deserving one, and the small expenditure so likely to achieve concrete good, that the co-sponsors feel that they cannot accept that the coordinator and his staff should be found from the existing UN establishment, which is already overburdened. Moreover, the overall financial cost of the whole proposal in the draft resolution should be less than $300,000 per annum, and indeed only some $261,000 per annum if the new office were located here. Thank you, Mr. President.
You have heard the introduction of this new revised version of the resolution, EL 1438 Revision 1. We now consider document EL 1440, the amendment of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. Representative of the Lebanon.
Mr. President, I understand your concern to expedite the work of the Council, but I thought that there are other amendments. Maybe the proper procedure would be to listen to the representative of France and then of Hungary, and then we will proceed to deal with the text together, either by voting or, if we need those, for explanations of vote, rather than speak on one document at a time. My concern is to help you save the time. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank you. I'm afraid you're not helping me this way. We shall take the amendments one by one, consider them successively, and then vote on them. I believe this would be a much more rapid and effective procedure. Thank you. Representative of the Lebanon.
Mr. President, but I would just submit for the proper course of action to consider the amendments all together, one after the other, and then decide on what course of action you propose to us, but to consider each amendment separately, vote on it, and then take the next amendment, I don't think, Mr. President, and you'll find out that this will help immensely the work of the Council. Thank you.
Of course, if the debate degenerates into a procedural discussion, this won't help matters. But if we take the amendments one after the other, it will. And this will not stop natural disasters, but at least it will stop us having a heart attack. The distinguished delegate of the Soviet Union.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would merely wish to draw attention of the members of the Council to the fact that the amendments submitted in document 1440 in Russian are entirely correct, in French as well, but in as much as many delegations will work on the basis of English, I should like to draw attention to the fact that the correct version is presented in Corrigendum 1. Thank you, sir.
I thank you for this most useful remark. We now turn to draft EL 1442, an amendment submitted by France. Thank you, Mr. President. As you pointed out, the third amendment proposed by my delegation falls by the wayside since it was already accepted. So there are only 2 amendments left. As for the first of these amendments, I'm not an expert in linguistics, but if the distinguished delegate of the United Kingdom tells me that the English word to direct is the equivalent of the French orienter, I shall accept that and will be happy with it. Of course, in the French version then of this draft resolution, the word diriger will be replaced by the word orienter. We shall now vote on the resolution as a whole. EL 1438, revision 1 as amended. Will those who are in favour of this resolution be so kind as to raise your hands? Thank you. Against? Thank you. Abstentions, please. Thank you. The result of the voting, 24 in favour, none against, 2 abstentions. The draft resolution has been adopted. The distinguished representative of the Soviet Union has the floor for an explanation of vote.
Yes, sir. I should like to explain my vote. Our delegation was not voting against, but on the contrary was supporting the coordination of assistance in cases of natural disaster. It is our profound conviction that the establishment of new posts in the Secretariat of the United Nations in no way would facilitate the fate of the people, but on the contrary would merely lead to unproductive, unjustified bureaucratic expenses.
President, I want to point out a typographical error which has crept in with regard to footnote number 1 in draft resolution EL 1438 revision 1.
245,
that
please.
Footnote does not apply to the
Bernadette,
Peru, as Peru is
I'd like to give you the final telegram on natural disasters.
Our own interpretation now is that the Secretary General would appoint, as he may deem fit, in the light of the resolution, the coordinator with the rank within the budget limitations and the need for him to efficiently do his work. With that understanding, we are able to vote the way we did. Thank you, Mr. President.
I believe the distinguished delegate of the Soviet Union wished to speak.
Yes, sir. Not a question of explanations of vote, but the interpretations of the resolution are being stated. If this is so, then the views of my delegation must be known as well.
We shall not be reopening a debate on this question. Each one has his own interpretation, and it is up to him to think and ponder on it, and up to the Secretary General to draw the corresponding conclusions from our decisions. I give the floor to the distinguished representative of the United States. I hope he will help us not to reopen the debate.
Mr. Chairman, I'll accept what you just last said. Thank you.
Resolution approved 25-0-2, paren, USSR, Hungary, close paren. Paragraph. French attempt to delete word, quote, direct, unquote, in operative paragraph 1A was not pressed when translation of word into French was changed.
If we make a mistake or he gets into difficulty, it doesn't matter what the wording of the resolution says, there will be difficulty.
But you see, we have no resolution of the work we're doing with the High Commissioner's office. And the coordination goes on, you practically automatically...
Without the verb direct.
No direct and no difficulty.
Not even the word orienté.
Not even orienté. Again, thank you.
The coordinator must be a diplomat. Or have the capacity of a diplomat.
Merci.
Yes.
Merci. Au revoir.
Au revoir. À bientôt.